Welcome you all. We have a very distinguished guest today, Dr. Said Fahri Mahmud from the uh, Social Sciences University of Ankara. Welcome, Dr. Mahmud. Now I would like to give some brief information about Dr. Mahmud. He is an associate professor of economics at the Social Science University of Ankara. He earned his PhD from McMaster's University in Canada in 1986 and previously had faculty positions at the University of Karachi and Bilkent University, where he served for over 28 years. His research spans applied econometrics, macroeconomics, financial markets, and monetary policy. In recent years, Dr. Mahmud has focused on applying system dynamics modeling to macroeconomic analysis. He co-led a TÜBİTAK-funded project that developed a novel OSTİM model of Turkey's balance of payments, offering insights into the 2018 currency crisis. This model has since been expanded to examine the monetary policy impasse in balancing macroeconomic and financial stability. He is currently supervising PhD research on the augmented Taylor rule in emerging markets and on the impact of Turkish bank lending standards on SME loan quality. Today, he is going to make a presentation about Turkish Gridlock, trade-off between macro and financial stability, a partially integrated system dynamics approach. The floor is yours, Dr. Mahmud.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Bahar and OSTİM University for inviting me, giving me a chance to present my work here. The title is Turkish Gridlock, and it might be a word a bit hard, but gridlock is a situation where things are entangled and there is no automatic corrective mechanism to come out of it. So this is the gist of it. As you will see, I'm here with Fatih Furkan as well. He is our RA at ASBU, and he's also doing PhD with me. Plus, he has been associated with our research for over 8 years. When I was in Bilkent, we started our TÜBİTAK project. He was part of it, and later he continued with us. ASBU finished the project, and we have been doing work together since then. In today's presentation, one thing is that we will be sharing with you the results of our extended model to what has already been published recently. And we also are going to present some scenario analysis. If you recall that between the periods 21, late 21, October and 2023 May, there was this policy of lowering the policy rate by the central bank of Turkey, and that came under debate in the treasury also, that under high inflation conditions, it was a post-pandemic period when the central bank decided to reduce the interest rate while all other emerging markets, advanced economies, choose to hike the interest rate. So this was something very unusual. So we are going to present scenario analysis of that segment, that particular time period, which is also overlapping with what is called as the Turkish new economic model that was introduced by the government in October 2021. So how this work, as far as our work is concerned, we started this TÜBİTAK project, we successfully finished it. We were able to, there was Professor Karu Yamaguchi from Japan, and we were able to get assistance from TÜBİTAK to fund his visits to Turkey. And he is expert of system dynamics, wrote several books and many articles. So he was with us. He helped us in understanding the methodology. And in the end, this project helped us beyond the scope of the terms of that project. We were able to find an innovative approach to developing short-term exchange rate, nominal exchange rate model, which is entirely based on balance of payment. So these are our two recent publications. One is about the core model in Economic Bulletin, and more recently, the Singapore Economic Review with Murad Julek. And so we are presenting what we did after this, because this work was between 2011 and 2020, March, that is pre-pandemic period. Now what we are going to present today is post-pandemic period included in the analysis, and also this lowering of the policy rate during the Turkish economic model period 21-23. Okay, so background motivation is that the global financial crisis 2008 led to a very unique situation in which advanced economies implemented very unusual, unconventional monetary policy. If you recall, quantitative easing. So it created lots of liquidity in those economies, excess liquidity. At the same time, those economies went into recession. So excess liquidity was there, which was targeted towards emerging market for short-term investment. So the portfolio debt flows took the dominant position in the non-resident investments into emerging markets. Furthermore, there was a shift in the emerging markets of having these debt security bonds denominated in local currency. Shift does not mean that it's an entire shift, but a significant shift. One of the reasons for that is to avoid the local currency mismatch. When you have your debt in FX, there can be a situation in which you have difficulty in repaying. So many countries are choosing to go into local currency bonds. Then what we also see in the literature is the role of the exchange rate in impacting the domestic condition, the financial channel. There is lots of work. If you Google Scholar about the spillover effects of capital flows, portfolio debt flows to emerging market, you will see so many papers coming out in recent years as well. So traditionally, what we learn in economics about monetary policy, Taylor rule type thing, that the central bank particularly are focused on price stability and output stability. So the trade-off has always been between output stability and inflation. But then with this dimension of excessive portfolio debt flows into emerging markets added another dimension to the monetary policy in many emerging markets, including Turkey. So there are many papers on pull and push factors determining these capital flows. Maybe I'm going too fast right now, but it will be clear as we move on. Interest rate differential turned out to be an important factor in attracting the portfolio debt flows from advanced economies to the emerging economies. There is this latest paper, Gallows 2024, overall global financial conditions represented by VIX, and the position of US dollar vis-a-vis other leading reserve currencies in the world. These turned out to be recent conclusions. So what's the thing here? The thing here is that what we will show is once you start depending more on portfolio debt flows, which are by very nature can be short-term in nature and can be subject to quick reversals as well. So central bank in emerging markets then have to look at the financial stability situation as well. They align their monetary policy to what is happening outside in the advanced economies as well. So by monetary independence from the trilemma model, it means that if there are these financial flows which are subject to quick reversals, then the monetary policy also becomes dependent on the monetary policies in advanced economies. They can be therefore countercyclical. As it happened in Turkey in 2021, Turkey came out of this post-pandemic period. The government had the concern of both output growth and employment, but at the same time, in the rest of the world, economies, the interest rates were increasing. So if you were to also cater what is happening outside, then your monetary policy can become counter-cyclical. This is also not our area, but if the financial institutions around the world are in a position that they can take a position of withdrawing funds from political debt stocks, then maybe emerging markets may need to concede some political concession. I remember, I don't know the year, this Trump tweet, the famous Trump tweet, it was in the previous Trump presidency, when Turkey arrested somebody, some US citizen, and it was going into this trial, and then the Trump tweeted that if we want, we can destroy you. I mean, although this is not our domain, but yet when you're sitting with a large stock of debt liabilities, which can be subject to quick reversals by the non-resident investors and bring financial instability, so it's important that we address the situation. So it is in this background that this work examines challenges faced by the Central Bank of Turkey and the policymakers in balancing the trade-off between output and financial stability. By financial stability, it's a very restricted concept that we're using in our research. By financial stability, we mean instability means that excessive depreciation of the currency within a short time period, like we experienced in 2018 currency crisis and later. There were several episodes. We remember the dollar is depreciating very quickly. Okay. This I'm just documenting the central bank response since 2011. It's very clear that Central Bank of Turkey was concerned about this change in the nature of capital flows coming into emerging markets, including Turkey. Turkey was one of the leading recipients of portfolio debt. So this is what in one of the papers co-authored by Erdem Bashi, he was also taking charge of central bank at that time. So he writes that this our approach, so this approach, meaning the approach adopted by the Central Bank of Turkey, differs from others in its emphasis on the use of macroprudential policy measures rather than capital flow measures, improving domestic financial stability in the face of volatile capital flows. So it's very much documented. The Central Bank of Turkey had this concern in 2011 after this quantitative easing, and the massive surge in flows of portfolio debt into emerging markets, that they had to do something. So they did implemented a policy mix. I will not go into it, but certain macroprudential measures had been introduced in 11. So what I'm going to do in next 5 to 10 minutes, visualization is sometimes the best where we can get an idea. So instead of going into the arguments, let's see. So first, we are discussing Turkey right now. So shift in the sources of external finances since 2010 and 11. Okay, so what do we see here? We see that this is the period. This is the period right here, 2010, 2011, and you can see that there is a marked shift. So when we are talking about sources of external financing for emerging markets, either it is direct investment, portfolio investment, or you just borrow money. right, from the international institution. So you see very clearly that the portfolio and short-term flows took a very dominant position compared to what it was prior to 2010. What you also see in this visualization, 2018 crisis, you see that there were massive reversals, right? There were negative flows. So money was going out of the portfolio debt that caused, or at least partially caused, rapid depreciation of the currency. Then the next circle that you see is the period what we are going to refer to as STEM, the Turkish economic model that was introduced with this debatable policy of lowering interest rate when inflation was high, and in the rest of the emerging markets, central banks were raising their policy rates. Why this topic is relevant right now? Now we see that there is again surge in the portfolio that flows into Turkey, right? So the exchange rate is now more stable, but what we will make our argument, the basis of our argument is that accumulating massive liability, portfolio debt liability, also makes you seriously vulnerable to external shock to maintain your financial stability, and sometimes you will need to choose between your economic growth objectives and financial stability. So that's the title, that the trade-off between real sector stability and the financial stability. What else we can show visualization? This is again, what we have done here is we are showing you the Federal Reserve policy rate, effective policy rate, and Turkish weighted average funding rate, what they call it. So we see, I mean, the simple visualization shows you a very synchronous movement of Turkish policy rate and the Federal Reserve rate prior to the pandemic period. I also had that correlations there. But this yellow block is what we will be discussing today. This is the block when the Central Bank of Turkey decided to lower its policy rate, despite the fact that the Fed rate was rising. I think this is the point where I should be able to explain the very basic topic that we will be discussing today, that given the shift in the nature of capital flows into emerging markets, including Turkey, you lose some of your monetary independence in terms of aligning your policy rate to the leading financial center, the Federal Reserve rate. But then during that particular period, Turkey chose to go the other direction, and that caused lots of problem that we shall see. This I'm very quickly showing. These are the stocks, not the flows of portfolio debt. As you can see, since 2010, there was an increase, slide, and after 22-23, we again see that the stocks are rising because flows are coming in. So again, we are in the period where the stocks of portfolio debt are rising. It means we are not being able to open some other channels of external financing. In the beginning, I argued about composition of this portfolio debt in local currency or in FX. This is how it looks like for Turkey. It's mixed. There is a large percentage which is still in local currency, but at the same time, you also have portfolio debt in foreign currency. You also see the reversals during the TEM period also, from FX portfolio debt and the local currency denominated debt. Okay. Again, another visualization. Here we are defining a spread as the difference between the CBRT funding rate and the Federal Reserve rate. And you can very clearly see that, so this blue curve here is measured on the right-hand side. Excess, this drop in the spread is that time period here, and you see clearly, you see the reversals from portfolio debt. And once it was in 2023 May, right? May, all of a sudden, central bank raised the interest rate to 40% and then to 50%, if you remember. So that's where the spread went up, and you see all the flows, portfolio debt flows started coming in. So I mean, this is just a visualization of a relationship, the linkage between the net flows in portfolio debt. So that's the argument that once you are too dependent on the debt portfolio for your external financing, you also lose some of your monetary independence in setting up your policy rate. Okay. So I'm again dividing the same thing, but I'm also highlighting what happened during those periods. So you see that the exchange rate during this time period, policy rate was reduced, but spread rate was going up, it was going in the other way. So the exchange rate from 8.5 to 19.48, and net FX reserves were down by $58 billion. It means that the central bank had to basically sell around $58 billion in the market to keep the exchange rate to some manageable range. Policy rate was decreased from 18% to 9% during this time period. Then they decided to raise it to 50%, and then even during that period, you see that the exchange rate going from 21 to 28, but the net reserves. So during that period, central bank decided to buy back bonds that they are sold in the market, and that's one of the reasons why exchange rate went up despite you see the positive flow. So I need to go quickly here, right? I mean, there is another ongoing work. What we want to show you, this is emerging markets. I don't know why Turkey is not here. So Turkey is, all we are showing is the stocks as a percentage of total liabilities in emerging markets, rise and then the fall, rise and the fall. But you see other countries, something is wrong. I should have India, China, and Brazil here. We can switch the word. Okay, so you can scroll this. Sorry about this. I don't know why we are not. But open the version I shared with you. In the version that you shared with me, there is a problem. Okay. Yes, now it is coming. Yes. Yes, now we have Turkey here. Thank you, Fatih. But I don't know, I made a few changes in the end also. Okay, so we did, I mean, while we were doing this work, we also did this panel regression recently completed, supporting this is documenting that there is lots of work acknowledging the fact that the traditional Taylor rule of monetary policy, in which you used to have output gap, people are showing that exchange rate, Fed rate, capital flows, they also matter in determining amount policies in the emerging markets. So we took this. This is not part of today's presentation. We are not going into details of it. All we are showing is we did this panel regression, taking the other leading emerging markets, recipient of portfolio debt. And what we are showing here is Federal Reserve rate with positive coefficient, so loss in monetary independence. We see that emerging markets with greater stocks of portfolio debt compared to their total FX liabilities lose more monetary independence, and emerging markets who have excess FX reserve, they seem to lose less of monetary independence. So it is supporting, from the econometric model point of view, what is the main argument that we are making, that when it is not just the flows of portfolio debt, but it's how much you have accumulated as a stock, which is subject to reversals, quick reversals, that makes you lose more of your monetary independence. I hope I am making this point very clear. If I can make this much a point, that's like 60% of what we want to present today. It's not the flows that matters, and all these papers that we have they don't have these stock concept, but one paper takes capital flows into the augmented Taylor rule. We are showing that it is not just the flows, but how much dependence, how much stock of portfolio debt you have accumulated that makes central bank monetary policy more dependent on external factors. So let's go to our model. So it has two very basic components. One is we are modeling short-term dynamics of nominal exchange rate only using the international FX transactions documented and balance of payment. It means that although there can be internal factors like dollarization that may impact the short-term movements in nominal exchange rate, but our model focuses on international transactions, and we are using the system dynamic modeling approach in developing first a core model of nominal exchange rate, and then expands the core model to incorporate other relevant components. One question that may come to your mind that is the real exchange rate that matters. So we first model the nominal exchange rate, and then from there we develop the real exchange rate, incorporating the inflation module into our model. So together with inflation, we come with this real exchange rate, which goes into exports, which goes into imports as well. So we model the nominal exchange rate. In the end, we use real exchange rate in our model. So balance of payment basics, although, I mean, in undergrad economics, we learn about balance of payment, but during last 5-6 years, we learned so much that balance of payment can give you in terms of the information. So let me give you the very basic idea of how we are using balance of payment in modeling the short-term dynamics of the nominal exchange rate. This is the simplified equation. There are two very basic components, current account, financial account, and the balance of payment. When I was taking economics and discussing exchange rate, balance of payment approach, it used to focus on exports. Imports, if currency is appreciated, you lose your export, imports go up, you have deficit, and that deficit will lead to auto correction in terms of depreciating the currency. So it was the exports and imports in the theoretical foundation of balance of payment explaining exchange rate. It was the current account side. But in the recent years, since 2011, we find that it is the financial account that takes the prominence in determining short-term fluctuation. So this is a very simplified equation here. Current account minus financial account is the net reserve flows. And if you have a current account deficit, which means that there are net FX outflows or there is excess demand for foreign exchange. But at the same time, if your financial account is negative, that is, you're increasing your liabilities. so there is inflow coming in the financial accounts, then it can balance, it can provide liquidity in the market, right? And the difference between the two would determine what is the situation in that particular period as far as the net reserve flows are concerned. So this is the idea from our modeling perspective. The net reserve flows determines the excess supply demand in the FX markets and impacts the nominal exchange rate. So we have to take into account all transactions in the balance of payment going as data into a model, into a module of exchange rate in terms of dividing them into demand and supply, and then using system dynamic approach. System dynamic approach goes back to 1993. It was mostly used in physical sciences, but only recently with the development of some softwares like Vensim, Stella, which are kind of user-friendly compared to the work you need to do in terms of the solution of the differential equations. It is becoming very convenient in some sense that you draw your model, and in the background, the model, the program is helping you in developing your system dynamic model. So one of the basic ideas of system dynamic is that we need to understand the structure of the system that can explain the dynamic behavior. Only recently, there is some documentation how system dynamic is taking some interest in social sciences also. People are started using. And okay, so I'm going to, this is the most important aspect of system dynamic. I'd like to highlight three very basic elements within the system. And this is also very much in the nature, contraction and expansion, determines the growth part. So we always have a positive feedback system. By feedback, we mean the system within itself is feeding back. So one endogenous variable connected to the other endogenous variable or the stock variable. So it can be positive in nature, it can be negative in nature, and there can be delays in adjustment. So these are the three very basic concepts where they differ from econometric modeling approach. I mean, the normal econometrics that we use, but at the same time, system dynamic is still developing, and hopefully it will have more econometric kind of thing integrated in future. So I just skipped this part. It uses this Euler method. So you can choose between Euler or Runge-Kutta method of solving the differential equation. It has been found that social sciences models Euler solution works better. So I'm going to skip this just to optimize. I mean, this is documenting more formally what system dynamic is. But I would like to okay. A very basic abstract description of our modeling approach. What you see here is called system dynamic causal loop dynamics. So it's part of the system's thinking that even before you start modeling, you first need to think how this model is supposed to function. So let me explain here. So you see that there is this R, the reinforcing loop, okay, reinforcing loop. And then there is this balancing loop. In between, we have exchange rate. On the right-hand side, we have the financial account of the balance of payment. On the left-hand side, we have the current account of the trade finance. The right-hand side, the net capital flows documented because we are focused on this portfolio debt. So we are explaining portfolio debt part of the financial account, not the direct investment or the loan behavior. So it is connected to foreign interest rate, as we just output that with dependence on portfolio debt. Your monetary policy in the augmented Taylor rule becomes dependent on foreign exchange rate, in our case, Federal Reserve rate, and also on your policy rate, as we saw the relationship between spread and the net flows. So if, let's say that the foreign interest rate goes up, lead to some reversals from your debt portfolio, it has a red sign, right? It is going to depreciate your currency. Depreciation of the currency will further bring outflows, reversals. So this is kind of reinforcing in the sense that it is aggravating. It is this particular loop is aggravating the situation. So as far as the central bank is concerned, it can make FX interventions to balance it, or it can raise its domestic policy rate. On the other hand, on the other side of it is the current account or the trade balance. You see this blue sign, as the currency depreciates, it makes your trade balance goes into positive situation. And as the trade balance goes into positive, it's going to appreciate your exchange rate. So that's where you have the balancing. Balancing is coming from the trade side or the monetary policy. Trade balance is impacted by inflationary condition in the foreign country, in your local currency, domestic currency, the GDP in the foreign currency, and GDP domestic. So what happens in reality is, given this abstract concept, all these components are modeled in a system dynamic sense. When we started this work, we didn't have a theoretical support of this work of using financial account to explain dynamics of the nominal exchange rate in the short run. But then we found this modern asset market approach, especially this Gardberg 2018 paper, which again makes the same argument that with the advent of having more portfolio debt flows, financial accounts become more important in determining the dynamics of the nominal exchange rate in the short run. So basically, it's a hybrid approach. We are using ER-based BOP financial transaction, and then we are modeling the part of the portfolio investment or portfolio debt. So we started, this is a picture of balance of payment from system dynamic point of view. The green parts are the residence assets, and the yellow part are the non-residence liabilities to us. So all these flows are there. Ultimately, these flows determine the reserve position in a particular month. We started with, I've already explained this part before. So we started with a very benchmark core model in which we are connecting all data from balance of payment and dividing them into demand and supply depending upon the sign of the transaction, whether it's plus or minus. And then we have our model equation in which it is resting on the ratio of demand to supply of forex in the market. We have a concept of expected exchange rate as a ratio, and then we have a differential equation. I will come back to this. So that's our, so you can see that the expected exchange rate is nothing but the difference between the log of demand and log of supply. And this eta is our parameter to be optimized, to be estimated, and also the delay time in this model. So when we did this, when we just used data, we were able to very good fit. I mean, we were able to explain exchange rate movements. So the green is data. Right? Green is data. Yeah, I think green. Huh? Yeah. Exchange rate, actual data is green. Blue is our simulation. So you can see that balance of payment transactions in the short run with our optimization is capturing. So now we come, I think, just for one time, we have all the equations of our actual model, how we expect. So exports are related to what is happening, industrial production index in the EU, and RER, where RER is the ratio of domestic price to foreign price in Turkish lira. Imports are again dependent on IPI domestic, RER, and the price of oil financial account, we have portfolio debt, and we have other loans. In addition, we have this augmented Taylor rule, in which we have both the inflation, domestic inflation, and the foreign interest rate. It can be further extended. We tried BIS, but it was not very useful in case of Turkey. This is the typical module that we use for the optimization. So there are two types of variables: soft variables and this exogenous variables. And there is a differential equation that this is what we use in the end. So on the right-hand side, we have the balance of payment current account. On the left-hand side, we have the financial account. We are taking the debt security stock, modeling this part. The simulation of this is integrated with rest of the components of the model. Similarly, loans part is modeled. There are parameters, underlying parameters, optimization parameter. At the center, we have exchange rate. And then we are adding inflation CPI module, and we have Taylor's rule, augmented policy rule in there. So it is basically the exchange rate model structure over balance of payment transactions. At the same time, we have the inflation and policy rate and IPI, industrial production index, added. So it is, that's why we are calling it partially integrated, because IPI is added. IPI has one of the determinants of production policy rate, that is the interest rate structure. Financing is one of the determinant of IPI, but it's still some direct concern. We may need to expand it a bit further. So real side is introduced by adding an IPI module into our overall balance of payment model, exchange rate, and also we have the augmented Taylor rule. So let's see. I think we are doing fine. So sample period 11 to 23.5, correct? Yeah. The work has extended to, is that okay also? I made a mistake, right? So this is what we have, right? This is what the partially integrated model now we have. So all we are showing here is how the fit looks like. So again, green is the data and blue is our simulation. That is after optimization, how the simulation looks like. Debt securities, by debt we mean loans part in the financial account. We have those parameters over there, optimized parameters. This is our policy rate. Inflation is taken from CPI model, so it is indirectly calculated. Exports, imports, and IPI. So how do we know it's a good model? This is where it's the modeling, but we do have this tile inequality statistics that comes out from this Bensing program, and it basically gives you the breakdown of the total error into bias, unequal variation US, and unequal covariations UC. So high value of if we have, it will show a bias, a systematic bias is there. So bias are considered critical here. So if you have a high value of because it's summed to 1, so if is relatively high, then you know that your model has some systematic bias in it. Similarly, US high value also indicates that value high may show systematic error. However, UC can be high, it is unsystematic. So sum is 1, and we also include this mean absolute percentage error. This is what we have in terms of presenting as far as the goodness fit of the model. So these are the results we found for all of our modules. So as you can see, and US, all of them relatively are much lower values, and UC higher values. So it's okay. The R square are also seem okay. We can also do this I'm just giving you as an example of sensitivity analysis. We can set the range of the parameters. Like in this case, we did 10% up, 10% down, and then we are constructing these bands. Why I've included only 4, you can see in exchange rate, for example, you see that there is financial instability in the later period. The band has increased, right? So it is difficult to predict the behavior of exchange rate, while others seem okay. Okay. How much time? Can I take another 50 minutes? Yes. Because this is the part where we show you. We started a bit later, right? And I asked you to give me a bit more than 45 seconds. So our argument is that pre-pandemic period, we were already living in this augmented Taylor rule policy as far as the central bank is concerned. It means by including financial stability or instability into their objectives, in a way they were looking at what was happening in advanced economies as well. So federal rate became also an important factor in determining the monetary policy. But during this time period, this experimental, it became also controversial, debatable that under high inflation condition, when all other countries were raising the policy rate, Turkish central bank decided to lower the rate. So we are taking that part in our scenario. You can see that cross. I mean, there is nothing wrong in lowering your policy rate, but at the same time, the federal rate was increased significantly during the same time. So that was a total mismatch in terms of the augmented Taylor rule. So in a way, central bank abandoned that augmented Taylor rule. And you can see that we lost very significant net reserve in keeping the exchange rate in balance. So how we are going to, or how we use this system dynamic model. We have a coefficient of Fed rate in the augmented model. Before the time period, the coefficient was 6.425. During the time period, it was -2.5. We went reverse. So we are asking the question in terms of a scenario, what if during that period we go back to the old rule, we take a moderate position of 3.21, half of it, or we get no response. Okay. It means that we are using our model policymakers while they were taking a decision of lowering the policy rate. We think that there was a possibility of taking a moderate way. And so we present the results. I'm repeating, the old rule, pre-pandemic, pre-time period, our model captured it as a coefficient 6.42 for the Fed rate in the augmented Taylor rule in the system dynamic model, but it became -2.11 in reality. So we are asking our model, what if we didn't, we kept following the old rule or the moderate or no response. So this is what we get. As far as the policy rate, so why is it? So if central bank would have followed the old rule, and this is very encouraging for us because it says that the policy rate should have been 35 or 38, given the rise in the Fed rate. Moderate rule is there. It is much lower. No response is red, and the simulation is there. So how this would have affected exchange rate? So if we would have gone to the old rule, exchange rate would have been very stable, right, on the lower side. In actual reality, we did lose. There was excessive depreciation of the currency by going opposite. So, but moderate rule, we would have achieved something in between. Same is true about inflation. But this is the trade-off part. So going the old rule, we would lose less output. Less loss in output was less with the old rule, right? This is IPA. Yes. No response is red. Simulation is the actual one. So by going the old rule, policy rate had to go up to 36, 37. We would have lost lots of output, industrial output. So that's the trade-off. If you try to balance your exchange rate and inflation by raising the policy rate when Fed rate was going up, there was a trade-off. I think this is the crux of all that we have, and we also have that during that period, $38 billion were sold by the central bank to stabilize during the same period, time period. We asked the question, what if they did not intervene? So you see very drastic results. Without that intervention, the exchange rate would have hit around 40 with that rule of decreasing the policy rate. Now, so okay, so model presents a clear policy trade-off between stability of real side IPI and financial side exchange rates and inflation rates, extreme reversals in policy rates, despite a drastic rise in the Fed rate in 2022, made Turkey further financially vulnerable. Our model can be helpful. It can be used by policymakers. What is the takeaway? I think why it is a gridlock? Because the only solution, you see, the stability of emerging market comes from the real side. That is, Turkey has to, everybody knows this, we have to increase the value of exports and earn more through the real side activity. As far as but an emerging market does need external finance. So somehow we need to promote FDI, which is going down. And this is one of the studies, OECD 2023 report. What it is showing is that Turkey is at the bottom of receiving the FDI in 2021 as a ratio of GDP compared to all other OECD countries. Similarly, it also documents that as far as licenses and permits regulations are concerned in Turkey, they are the worst in the OECD countries, and same is true about business. So, gridlock in the sense that we now have to forward all of this. We have to learn how to make reforms in our system so that we can encourage foreign direct investment and have less dependence on portfolio debt, which are subject to quick reversals and sudden stops. Okay, so that's where our work is going. We are planning to do this minimum wages scenario analysis and further improve our SD framework. We also like to see this credit growth, money supply, inflation part added to our inflation module. So we strongly believe that we have developed a knowledge framework, a platform, and that platform can be used, can be expanded, and other components can be added as per need of the researcher or the policymaker. So we are entering into a field which is getting popularity in economics, but it's a long way when it will become more popular. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present our work. Okay.
Working, yeah. Thank you very much for your presentation. And you presented us a very concrete, detailed model. How much Turkish government knows about such a model? How they have a model, indeed, in their minds and in the implementation. And do you think that they are aware of all the details of your models?
Yes. We did get an opportunity to go to the Ministry of Treasury. They have research unit, macroeconomic morning. So we did go there, made a presentation over there. And through our university, we also sent our work to the Central Bank. Still waiting for a response from them. Then we are still trying. I mean, we have to publish it. I mean, we should take some time to get acknowledgement. But as far as your question, we are looking forward to, we are in touch, for example, with some ministries. We made this informal presentations here and there, and we are hoping that if they give us, then we can also share them. Because behind this is a big system dynamic macro model that we finished for the right? It is from that big model that we are working on this smaller version, the biological model of the change. So we are trying, we are hoping that we will get a chance to stay. But as far as the problem is concerned, whether they know about, I'm sure that Central Bank, I mean, obviously they are, right at the beginning, I gave a quotation from the National Budget paper where they are fully aware and portfolio debts are short-term in nature, volatile, or subject to reversals as well, and certain financial stability. So they did come up with some monetary policy mix, but I think they need to also look at some other experiences. This PIS report, which included CBRC and other Latin American central banks, they came up with some conclusions, and I think this capital management tools maybe need to be considered with the extra. So yeah, I'm sure the central bank is fully aware about these choices, but whether they are, how much they know whatever modeling.
Can I ask another question? At the end, you referred to minimum wage in Turkey. If we take into consideration minimum wage and salary development, salary increases for retired people, public servants, public workers, etc., what could you say about the success of the Turkish model in the future?
Yes. Let me go back to that. There's a protagonist. So you see, we have this CPI conception. We tentatively need to but I think what we understand is that the overall wage structure is also connected to the minimum wage. That is all the private sector. They wait for the government announcement about the minimum wage and all the other wages accordingly. Minimum wage connected to some kind of wage, normal wage index, and that index going into our CPI, consumer price index, then we will be able to be in a position that we can run scenarios. Okay, if minimum wage raised by this much, how is it going to impact all the variables? So I don't know whether this is particular. Was it the question?
There is also the discussions at the moment that there is a process to increase the wages of public workers, amounting to 600,000 people, and there is also the collective bargaining discussions started for the public servants, which amounts to 4 million. People, so which creates a problem for financial stability. If we take them all together, what could you say about the success of Turkish economic model, which is seeking stability?
Yes.
Which is serving a stability. So what could be the links between the and we see the gridlocks?
I think the core question is when we are going to see really implement this inflationary policy, right? Which is not always a good thing for politically speaking. So in the end, it has to go into this disinflation because once inflation comes down, we don't need that much evidence in the minimum wages. As far as the model is concerned, if the policy maker get in touch with us, what we can do is we can integrate this minimum wage into our model. And then we ask them, okay, what are you thinking? A, B, C. Let's say there are three choices. They have to be then how much you impact inflation, how much you impact industrial production index, and they will try to that. This is the best we can do. Then our model can give some projections to different components of the macroeconomy, how a particular minimum wage policy will impact. Then they can do some bargaining or whatever. That's the policy they decide. So we can, our model can tell them, the impact of
Okay. So regarding the minimum wage, so it seems I perceive that the minimum wage enter into your system through the price index, I guess. For instance, we know that we are distinguish sectors, and maybe some sectors are not exposed to the wage. For instance,
our model is more macro so if somebody wants to use this platform, it can very easily, it can just integrate and make some sectors like real sector, services sector, differentiation. Yes, the system value is an open platform that you can expand as per your need, or you can contract as per your need. So we have more aggregated compact. Yes.
Regarding the Turkish central bank policy, every time most central banks was raising interest rate, the interest rate. So, is there any reason to support for this type of funds, information funds?
There is lots of critique about that that came out. Many papers, both internationally and locally, were written against it. Meaning at the time post-pandemic, when conditions were very inflationary in most of the emerging and advanced economies. But I think the concern was unemployment and growth, and that's what we showed you. That if you would have followed the STEAM advice of increasing the policy rate, yes, they would have yet you would have lost industrial production, output, and also have more unemployment. So that's the unfortunate trade-off. When you are sitting with large external finance dependent on portfolio, that's the argument of our work. That there needs to come out of this dependence of portfolio companies, rather work on other channels of external finance, so that we can make able to try this more independent. But that's a aspect of so. Still, the calls are coming in. Now we have again started accumulating portfolio debt. After 2 3 years, if we continue on the time, again there can be one incident outside and reversal and see can be shown of the next. So we are sitting on the time bomb kind of situation. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah, we can have a good Thank you.
So recording is off. I know, but it's open not because. So you're.